Hi everyone, γεια σας και καλώς ήρθατε to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're making pistachio-filled Galaktoboureko rolls. Galaktoboureko is basically a Greek custard pie. It's so well known and so delicious. It's like right up there with baklava. It's so good. If you've never had it, you should definitely try this recipe or the traditional one. So I first saw a version of this on either Instagram, I believe, somewhere. I saw it circulating, these little Turkish baklavas that were so decorative and beautiful. They almost look like little shells. I believe they're called mussel baklava or mussel-shaped baklava because it looks kind of like the mussel's shell. They were just beautiful, and I thought, let me give it a try. I mean, I was going to put my own spin on it like I did today and make them using store-bought phyllo because the dough that's usually made for those is a homemade phyllo. It's time-consuming, and I thought, let me take a shortcut. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that they didn't turn out anything like what they were supposed to look like. Plus, the phyllo was cracking and breaking, and it was just a mess, and I didn't want you to go through with it. Even if I perfected it, it's just too messy to make and too risky to waste all those delicious ingredients. So I put them together in little rolls because you guys love the Galaktoboureko roll recipe. It's one of the most popular recipes on my blog. So I put them together into rolls. So simple, so easy, and they're so delicious. You still have all that flavor. They're beautiful to look at, and they're easy to make, so you can't beat that. Let's get started. All right, so as with every syrupy dessert, we begin with the syrup. To a small saucepan, I'm going to add 2 cups of granulated sugar, 2 cups of water, and the juice of half an orange, or you could do half a lemon. And we're just going to mix this up and let it come to a boil. As soon as it comes to a boil and the sugar dissolves, we're going to take it off of the heat, add half a cup of honey, 1 tablespoon of rosewater, and half a teaspoon to 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. Then we're going to let it cool completely. Okay, so now it's time to make the custard. So in a saucepan, you want to add 3 cups of whole milk, and half of the sugar is half a cup of sugar. So about a 1/4 cup of sugar can go in there, and the rest is going to be beaten with the eggs. I'm also going to add a little pinch of salt, and you don't have to mix it or anything. Just put it on the heat over medium heat until it's scalding hot. In the meantime, we're going to mix up the remaining of the custard ingredients. So 2 whole eggs and 1 egg yolk. A 1/4 cup of finely ground semolina flour, and 1 tablespoon of cornstarch, also known as corn flour overseas. You can add the zest of an orange to this if you want to, the zest of a small orange, but since I want the rosewater flavor to shine, it goes so well with the pistachios, I'm going to leave it out. That's going to be in the syrup. You could also put some rosewater in the custard at the end. And just mix everything up until it's nice and smooth and thick. Okay, so once the milk is piping hot, right before it comes to a boil, we're going to temper the eggs. So pour the mixture into the egg mixture slowly while constantly whisking. This brings the eggs' temperature up, and it's going to keep them from turning into scrambled eggs. So the reason we put half of the sugar in here is it sits down at the bottom of the pan and it prevents the milk from burning. That's a nice trick that I learned from a pastry chef. You don't have to mix it up, just leave the sugar down there, and then it just mixes once you mix the whole thing all together. Then you just pour everything into the pot. And we're just going to continue cooking this over medium heat, whisking it continuously until it thickens and turns into a custard. Once that happens, we're going to take it off of the heat, and we're going to stir in 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract. You can do a teaspoon of pure vanilla extract and a tablespoon of rose water if you like, if you want more of that rose flavor in it. Okay, so now it's time to grind the pistachios. I like to buy peeled roasted pistachios because it really cuts down on the amount of work that goes into peeling pistachios. A lot of Mediterranean stores sell them already peeled and not roasted, raw, in the raw state, and those are going to be really nice and bright green. I like the contrast of the salty and the sweet, so I'm going to leave it up to you. You can use either raw pistachios or the roasted salted, or roasted unsalted, whatever you can find. Just put them in a food processor and pulse them a few times until they're very finely chopped. Okay, so now it's time to assemble the Galaktoboureko rolls. I have a pound of phyllo pastry. This is the number 4 that's usually used for baklava. It's thawed and it's at room temperature. Then I have a couple of trays of baking trays that are lined with parchment paper. You can put them all in one tray if they fit, but I'm not baking them all today, so I'm going to freeze some, and I'm baking a small batch. So that's why I have more than a few trays here. Then I have 2 sticks of butter, which is a half a pound. This is unsalted butter that I've just melted, and we're just going to put everything together now. So open up the package. You never want to open up phyllo before you're ready to use it, because then it just dries up and then it starts to crumble on you and it becomes impossible to work with. I have a little scoop for the custard. This is a ice cream scoop. It's about 1.5 tablespoons. You can use a regular tablespoon. I just find this so much easier. Okay, so you take a sheet of the phyllo pastry and you're going to drizzle butter along half the side of it. Fold it over in half. Try to get it as even as possible. Drizzle some more butter over the top. Then you're going to take a scoopful of the custard, put it down at the bottom, a spoonful of the ground pistachios, and then you're going to fold over just the edges. The more you fold it over inward towards the center, the more narrow it's going to be. It's going to be kind of fat. So if you want it a little bit on the thinner side and a longer little roll, then that's the way to get it that way. And then you just roll up and you put it on your baking tray. And you're going to keep doing this until the filling runs out. Okay, so there's a little bit of cream left over, and I didn't feel like opening up a whole new pack of phyllo just for a few more little rolls. I could probably get 4 more rolls out of this, so I'll leave it up to you if you have any leftover phyllo in your fridge, but this will not go to waste. We'll finish this up later on. So brush the tops of the rolls with the remaining melted butter. So once you assemble the rolls, you can either bake them all together in the oven. The oven should be preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. You can bake them on the center rack and just rotate the trays if they don't all fit on one rack for about 35 minutes or until they're beautifully golden all around. Oven temperatures do vary, so keep an eye on them. And then you just take them out and pour the cooled syrup on top. Let the syrup fully absorb, and then they'll be ready to serve. But before we move on, let me say something about the syrup. The syrup can be made a day ahead and stored in the refrigerator, and actually that is the best way to pour it on these because the pastry should be nice and hot and the syrup should be nice and cool, and what that's going to do is it's going to keep them crispy and it's just going to help the syrup absorb properly without making the pastries soggy, if that makes any sense. But, and there's a big but with this because from my experience I've had horrible things happen. If you're baking them in a glass tray or a ceramic tray, you never want to use cold syrup or cold anything on a hot glass or ceramic baking tray because it will either crack or shatter, and trust me when I tell you this, it is not a pretty thing to see or to clean up afterwards. So try to bake these in a metal tray, aluminum or stainless steel, so that way you can use the right temperature syrup on this. If the syrup has cooled down to room temperature, then no problem, but if you're using cold syrup, never. It'll shock the pan and crack it or shatter it, and you'll have a big mess on your hands. But now that we got that covered, if you just want to make a few of these freeze perfectly before they're baked. Just put them in the freezer, let them set and harden, and then you could either transfer them to a freezer-safe bag if you don't have the space, or you could wrap the whole tray with foil or plastic wrap, and they will stay fresh in the freezer for up to 2 months. Then you just take the plastic wrap or whatever you have on there off. You bake them in a preheated 350-degree oven, just like you would, until they're nice and golden. Obviously, if they're frozen, they are going to take a little longer to bake, about 40-45 minutes, but keep an eye on them. You're looking for that beautiful color. The temperature, though, stays the same. It's just very simple. That's pretty much it. If you're not a huge fan of pistachios, by all means, use walnuts and almonds or whatever your favorite flavors are. Okay, so it would be a good idea to poke a few holes on top of these because the cream does tend to seep out during the baking time. You can very easily just push it back in using a knife. And then you want to pour the cooled syrup on top. I have some that I made yesterday that I had in the refrigerator, so it's nice and cool. It's going to absorb properly. But it is time for the taste test because these are ready.
Howdy.
All Layla has to hear is taste test, and she comes running, and she's a cowgirl these days. Doesn't she look cute with this cowgirl hat?
Howdy.
All right, so once you cut into them, the phyllo should still be nice and crispy. After you put them on your platter, you can garnish it with some crushed pistachios. If you have some nice rose petals, you can put some rose petals on the side too. It's going to be creamy on the inside, crispy and buttery on the outside. Layla, you want to taste?
Yep.
Is it crispy?
Yep.
2 thumbs up. She loves it. Is it creamy? What does it taste like? Is it good?
Washed.
Moist, she said. Everything is moist. It's creamy. It's delicious. You guys are going to love it. The exact measurements are on the website, dimitrasdishes.com. If you want to learn how to make a classic Galaktoboureko, click over here, and I will see you right over there. Yes, as.